Most of our dreams are not very significant. You see, in Malaysia, generally, about the age of 7, we go to school. Now, there are some people before that age, before the age of going to school, sometimes things on the past life, they come more easily. So, some people, including myself, we have certain dreams, certain sometimes convictions about yourself in the past that could be quite accurate. And then sometimes after going to school, some of those dreams that you used to have before going to school, they cease, they stop, because when we start going to school, then we make a lot of friends, and our attention is caught by many things, worldly things. So our interest in all these worldly things start to increase, and so we forget some of those things from our past life. But sometimes if we meditate and we attain good concentration, and then as I said last night, the definition of sati by the Buddha is that if a person has sati, he remembers what was said and done a long time ago. So when we have very good concentration, sometimes memories of things that we have forgotten so long ago, when even before we were 1 year old, they come back very clearly, without any effort to remember. And then sometimes also in the dreams, you dream about your past life. And for example, you dream that you were in a certain country, but you've never been to that country, but you're sure that you were in that country. And so when the mind becomes sharper, then we tend to remember better. But most of our dreams are not worth thinking much about it. But for them, because they say that this their Rinpoche, the precious one, must take rebirth again and again, so they start looking. And some of the ways they employ a bit like Taoism, because I've seen Tibetan books where they get these lamas who go into a trance, and then they put water, and then they look into the water, and they can see things. For them it's important, to us it's not important. Yeah. Sometimes we find sometimes a bit hard to believe, because in the last few years in America, some of these lamas, they go there and they don't keep their moral precepts well, So there was one who used to sleep with a lot of women, because a lot of women wanted to have another Rinpoche. When they have a son with this Rinpoche, then it's also another somebody very special. So they become famous. So a lot of women lined up to sleep with that Lama. So as a result of not keeping his precepts, he was drinking and all that. So before he died, his body had a lot of disease. That being the case, we would not expect him to come back in the human form. See, it's very easy to repeat what another monk says. So most monks, most teachers, you hear some monk says this, and you just repeat it. So the Buddha says, just like in other religions, it's just like the case of a line of blind men. The first to the last are blind. The blind leading the blind. So we just keep following. Most people do not take the trouble to investigate so much. And also in many of our traditional Buddhist countries, this has been handed down generation after generation. So there is no reason for people to doubt. Right? But like in my case, I was different because I was disappointed by my first teacher. So because I was disappointed by my first teacher, I did not rely on any other monk as my teacher. Instead, I went to the books and studied. Because whatever a monk can teach you, he has also learned it from the books, isn't it? So instead of relying on him, I went back to the books and I studied all the books. Now, when people study the books, for example, you study a sutta. When you study the sutta, there are several things that the Buddha says. And sometimes, usually, the first time we study that sutta, we don't grasp certain important points in the sutta, We don't see the importance of certain statements that the Buddha made. Then when you study it a second time, you might catch more points in that sutta. And when you study it a third time, you again catch more points. Then you wonder, how come I didn't notice this before? So in the same way, sometimes people study the suttas and then they fail to notice certain important things. So it is for some of these reasons. Also, sometimes if you bring up some of these things, you make some people angry because some famous monk may have written that book, and then you go and say something different. You are challenging that famous monk, so you become unpopular. And besides, very few people will believe you also because you are not so famous. That's why nobody wants to be the bad guy. Everybody wants to be the popular guy. Boy Cho Chao Lang. You can continue to teach what is in those books, but you can explain to the children, this is the legend about the Buddha's life. It is not necessarily true. This is the legend that they have passed down. And usually legends, they like to write beautiful things. They like to put the hero high up in the cloud. So the funny thing is, recently you all must have heard about the Da Vinci Code. Yeah? For 2,000 years, Christians believe that Jesus was born of a Virgin Mary. Yeah? And all the good things about Jesus. Now, people start to make research and found that in the Bible it is actually stated that when Joseph married Mary, that she had already conceived. So, Joseph was not the father of Jesus. So because she had already conceived, they assume that God made her pregnant. Now after doing a lot of research, scholars come to the conclusion that she was either raped or seduced by a Roman soldier. So that makes Jesus an ordinary person. So why for 2,000 years nobody dug this up? Why 2,000 years everybody believed? Millions and billions of people believe. Now somebody comes up with this statement, shock everybody. Because he took the trouble to go and investigate. Most people never want to take the trouble. They just follow what the book say. The book say like that, I also follow like that. No? But very few people in the world will take the trouble to go and research and actually find out whether it is like that or not. So I'm one of those stupid people who go and research and find out this kind of thing and become unpopular. Now you have not come to that stage where you don't need a teacher. Now you need a teacher.
We can't understand the sutta if we want to study ourselves. We may not have that intelligence to understand. And the sutta is open to interpretation. Even the Satipatthana Sutta, even monks will have different interpretation.
Exactly.
So we need to look for teacher.
But you look for the teacher, that is another interpretation. So you must go back to what the Buddha said and study exactly what the Buddha said without all the distortion added by other teachers.
If I study myself, then I aid my own interpretation, it could be wrong. It could be even more terribly wrong than if I learn from a learned monk or nun.
Okay. I'm one of those few monks who stress on the sutta. So I have taught some suttas. So if you look at the 4 MP3s that I have brought, in the English one, you will find 2 MP3s on the Anguttara Nikaya. I spent about 55 hours reading and explaining the suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya. Not every single sutta, but most of the suttas. So if you listen to those tape talks, it will be much easier for you to understand the Anguttara Nikaya than if you were to read yourself. Because this Orang Putih, their English is very high class. So sometimes you read those books, sometimes a bit hard to understand. So sometimes when I find some difficult words, I use a simpler word, simpler English word. And then those points that are doubtful, I try to explain and quote from other suttas to compare. So if you listen to my tape talks, it's much easier. Suttas are discourses of the Buddha. The words of the Buddha. Yes, original words of the Buddha. Because sometimes the Buddha would just discourse, just teach the people something. Sometimes people come and ask questions and then he replies. All this is the words of the Buddha. Jesus was a meditator and he had at least the 4 jhanas. That's why he had some psychic powers like walking on the water. He didn't seem to have all the psychic powers like the Buddha had, but he had some of them. So he could have entered that state where his breath stopped and people thought that he was dead. And then after a few days he wake up again. This view that rebirth takes place immediately is not a standard Theravada view. It is a view of those who follow the Abhidhamma. Those monks who follow the Abhidhamma, they say that rebirth is instantaneous. And they also say that just like one consciousness stops here, another consciousness starts somewhere else. That there is nothing that goes from here to there. Some of these ideas, if you study the suttas, you find it's not true. In the suttas, we find that the Buddha said there are 4 types of beings. One enters the womb unknowing. He's not conscious of entering the womb. And then he stays in the womb unknowing. He doesn't know he's in the womb. And then he comes out of the womb unknowing. When he comes out also he doesn't know. That means his mind is not very clear, not very concentrated. Then there's another type a being that comes in the womb knowing, but he stays there unknowing, and then he comes out unknowing. Then there's another type that enters the womb knowing that he enters the womb. And when he's inside the womb, he also knows that he's inside the womb. But when he comes out, he's not mindful, he doesn't know, he's unknowing that he comes out. Then the third type is the best, like the Buddha. When he enters the womb, he knows. Probably he has chosen the womb to enter. When he's inside the womb also he knows. When he comes out also he knows. So that shows there is something that enters the womb. It's not that there's nothing that enters the womb. Okay, and then in the suttas the Buddha says if a being is to be reborn as a human being, okay, if there's going to be a human birth, 3 conditions must exist. Firstly, the mother and father must come together. Secondly, the mother must be in the right season, fertile. Thirdly, there must be this being that is waiting to enter the womb. Only with these 3 conditions that the human birth can occur. So this being which is due to be reborn in the womb, when he dies, he has an existence called an Antara Bhava. Antara Bhava means intermediate existence. Intermediate existence. In our early suttas, a rebirth, there are 5 destinations of rebirth. Heavenly being, human being, these 2 are Sugati, happy destinations of rebirth. Then there are 3 woeful destinations of rebirth, the ghost, the animal, and the hell realm. So there are only 5 destinations of rebirth. But in the Abhidhamma, they added 1 more, just like in Mahayana books. So you can know that this is a later idea. They added the Asura. It was not mentioned by the Buddha. Asuras are actually Devas. Definitely Devas in the Digha Nikaya is mentioned. So, if a person is due for a human rebirth, the moment he dies, he has an intermediate existence, which is not one of these 5. And the Buddha never bothered to explain this existence. He just says it is not one of these. It is just like a temporary stage, waiting to enter the womb. So, since this being that is entering the womb must wait for the right conditions, maybe if a person dies and is due to be reborn as an animal, he also may have to wait for a chance to enter the animal womb. So these 2 have to wait, not immediate. How long he has to wait, we don't know. It depends on the conditions. But there are some people like Professor Ian Stevenson, he's a professor in America. He has funds for research on rebirth. Whenever he hears of somebody who remembers the previous life, and there is enough evidence that this is a true case, then the university will give him funds. He will fly to whether it's Burma or Thailand or anywhere to interview and find out. So another person who has written about rebirth is this Francis Story, one Englishman. And Francis Story has a book called Rebirth. And in this book there are cases of people who remember their past life. So it is mentioned there about one man who died, He said after he died, he had a body which was very small. And he came out of the body and he saw his previous corpse lying there, and then he saw the funeral, everything, and then after that he didn't know. He didn't know where to go, He didn't know where to go. So he was waiting around. One day, he saw somebody from his sister's home going to the market and coming back with the basket. So he jumped into the basket. At that time when he died, the sister was pregnant. But somehow he went back to the house and became the sister's son. So it looks like he went inside and pushed out the other being. How I don't know. Now in the sutta, it is also mentioned by the Buddha that if a being, his karma is so bad that he's going to die and be reborn in hell, then the Buddha said, hell beings will come up and drag him down to hell. So actually, gu thao be bin u la, ngao thao ma min na, gu thao be bin. So there is such beings. And I have one supporter in Kampa. She told me a few days before the father died, he saw this gu thao be bin waiting for him at the door. So a few days after that, he passed away. So you see, this is mentioned that if you go to hell, hell beings will come and drag you down. And it's also mentioned the human rebirth. If you're going to be reborn back into the womb, you will have an intermediate body, and you have to wait for your time to jump into the womb. So these two are mentioned clearly. What about the others? From people's experience, we have heard, like in the case of one very good Buddhist in Penang. He was dying of cancer. So the wife was looking after him. Then the wife went to market. So the wife asked the neighbors who were Christians, an old couple, to come and look after him for a short while while she went to market. And then later, after his funeral, this Christian couple related that when they were looking after him, they saw devas coming down, making offerings to him. So maybe people who are due to go to heaven, devas will come and bring you to heaven. That human rebirth, then ghosts. I've heard stories of one person. He was a very fierce woman, very, very fierce. So 2 days before she died, her teeth came out. 2 long teeth came out like Dracula. And the family was very scared. Tried to close the teeth, could not close. And she was sleeping. And 2 days later she died. Immediately after she died, the teeth also disappeared. That shows she had taken the form of that ghost and still in the body, but already taken that form. So it looks like ghosts also should be immediate. So animal probably have to wait, and then hell will be dragged down. So this is the early Buddha's teaching. Not all is immediate. This being, in Chinese we call it Ling Hun. This Ling Hun is just a bundle of energy. This bundle of energy is ever changing, right? But it carries with it the memories, carries with it the characteristics of that person, the DNA of that person. So if that person has a particular face, so it's inside that ball of energy. So when he takes rebirth, also he will have that same kind of face. Now coming back to what you said about the father, we Chinese believe that if your relative passes away, after 7 days he comes back. Most of the time it's true, but not necessarily 7 days. Sometimes after 1 day, sometimes after 2, sometimes 3, 4, 5. And most of our humans, we come back as ghosts. Why? The Buddha did mention in the suttas that all beings, after we pass away, most of us will go into the woeful plains. It's very easy to go to the woeful plains. Very few come back as human beings, and fewer go to heaven. The higher you go, it's like a pyramid. The higher you go, it's less. The lower you go, more. So, why is it so easy for human beings to be reborn as a ghost? It's very simple to understand. Is that, just now I mentioned that heavenly beings and human beings are in that destination of rebirth called Sugati, happy destination of rebirth. The other three are Dukkati, from the word Dukkha, woeful destinations of rebirth. So because we are in a happy state of existence, every day that we live, we are using up our hoki, using up our good karma, our blessings. So the Buddha says heavenly beings, because of their very much blessings that they are enjoying life in the heavens. You hear about the Deva having 500 Devis as wives and all that. So having very nice time up there. Every day he enjoys himself, he's using up his karma. One day when his karma is used up, cannot stay as a Deva anymore. He will fall down, he will die. So same with human being. We enjoy life, we use up our karma. The moment we die, even though you don't do much evil, but your karma, good karma has been used up. So you must go lower down. And the next one is ghost. Ghost is not as bad as animals, So it's natural to go into the ghost realm. But if your person is very violent character, very lustful, bad-tempered, then you go into the animal realm. And then if you cheat people, kill people, and then you go to the hell realm. So like if a person dies and immediately is reborn as a ghost, that ghost usually is very attached to the body, He will stay inside the body for some time. So like you said, you talk to your father and he seemed to respond. It's not surprising if he's still inside the body, but he may have died and turned into a ghost. There is no way to find out. If you try to find out, you get cheated. But if your relative is in the ghost realm and your relative is suffering and wants your help, he or she will let you know, either through dreams or coming back to the house and walking around to let you know. Sometimes the window opens by itself, the light opens by itself, the fridge open and close and all that, just to let you know. So why do they want you to know? Because they are in a state of suffering. However much we suffer as a human being, it is very little compared to the ghost realm. Ghost realm, they have nothing to eat. Every night they must walk the streets and eat the shit, CKCR and all that, the corpses and all the dirt they have to eat. During our grandparents' time or parents' time, they had this. They didn't have these modern toilets. They have these rubber buckets containing all the shit. So sometimes people walk into the toilet and then they are doing their job and then they look down, they see a ghost there and they faint. So you see, ghosts go to such dirty places to eat all the dirty things because they have nothing better to eat. So when they are in that state, they come back. I give you there are many real case stories. About 2 years ago, my friend in Kuantan called me up. My friend in the Buddhist society. He had just retired, so his mother passed away. And then after keeping in the house for a few days, then they buried the mother. One day after burying the mother came back and entered the sister's body and called his name. So he got shocked. No? The way the mother spoke, is the lips moving also exactly like the mother, the voice also exactly like the mother. And he told my friend, he said, I have something very important to talk to you about. And I'm very sorry, I have to borrow, mention the daughter's name. So I have to borrow her body to speak to you, but I have no choice. I know it makes her very tired, she said. She said, I have to speak now, otherwise later I have no chance to speak. And she said, she's very suffering a lot. And she comes back to the house, even her own house also she cannot enter. There's this house spirit. When you are a human being, you are the boss. You walk in and out. After you become a ghost, it's in different state already. The house spirit will block you. You cannot enter. Don't recognize maybe. So she was feeling a lot of dukkha. So my friend, being very ignorant of the Dhamma, he said, Mo Pin, Mo Pian. I said, you continue to walk. Say, where it's bright, you go. Where it's dark, you don't go. I was thinking, when you're in the ghost realm, everywhere is dark, isn't it? Where the bright place? So the mother realized that he couldn't help her, so she left. Ghost stories are very interesting, Tell you another one. Many years ago in Penang, I had one lady supporter. Actually, she's a very pleasant Thai lady, married to a Malaysian Chinese in Penang. And the husband was not a very straightforward guy. So he will bring the wife to the temple and let her do dana, and then he'll go away, and 2-3 hours later he'll come and pick her up. So he himself never wanted to go into the temple. But one day he got sick, very sick to the point where he coughed blood. Then he thought he was going to die, so he prayed to heaven for life. And he made a vow that if he lived, he would change his ways. He would not cheat people. He would come to the temple to do dana and learn the Dhamma and all that. And then he lived. So after that, he started coming and used to see me regularly and ask me a lot of questions about Dhamma. I started to teach him the Dhamma, and I was learning quite fast. And then Chinese New Year came. The sister came back from KL, went to visit the mother in the old wooden house. When she entered the house, after a short while, the ghost entered her and started calling for the brother's name. The mother got a shock and asked him who he was. And he mentioned his name. Actually, he was this man's younger brother who died 10 years ago. He also used to join bad company and drink liquor and all that. And one day he got drunk, coming back on the motorcycle. He got run over by a lorry and he died. So he called for his brother, and he told the mother, he said, he's suffering, he's very hungry, and his abdomen is in pain. Probably the lorry went over him. I still can feel the pain. So he said he wanted his brother to help him. So the mother got a shock, and the mother didn't know what to do. And the mother said, "You please go back wherever you came from. You go back." So he saw that the mother could not help him, so he left. So later, this man, the brother, heard, and he came to see me and told me about it. I said, "You see, 10 years, your brother never looked for you. Now you learn the Dhamma, your brother comes to look for you. Why? Now got hope, Now this person learned the Dhamma, there's a chance that he can help his brother. Formerly, when he doesn't know the Dhamma, even the brother came to him also, he wouldn't know how to help the brother. So I told him, your brother needs your help. You have to do some dana and transfer the merit to him. But before you do the dana, for the next few nights, every night, you light incense and pray and tell him that you want to do dana on his behalf in a few temples, and the merit is his. That means he represents the brother to do the dana. So I told him to go to those temples where there are a few monks and offer food and offer either a piece of cloth or a robe on behalf of the brother, and every time he does that, transfer the merit. So he did that for a few days, then after that he transferred the merit, and then the brother didn't come back. So you see, it's interesting, after 10 years or so, they still keep an eye on you, waiting for the chance, and you can help them. When there's a chance, only they come back. In Timor, where I stay, these villagers told me that 15 years ago, two sisters about 15, 16 years old, around our area there, it's a Kinta Valley, a lot of ex-mining ponds, So these two sisters, they want to gather, this lotus flower, the seeds. People like to eat the seeds of the lotus flower. So the two of them, they didn't know how to swim. They rowed a sampan to the middle of the pond, the big lake, to gather these lotus seeds, and then they died. The boat capsized and they died. 15 years later, one day, they came back to the house, and they were seen standing outside the gate there with the clothes all wet. The neighbor saw. The neighbor was surprised. Who are these two young girls peeping into the house, looking very anxiously at the gates there, looking into the house? So the neighbor looked carefully and got a shock, realized that these two girls died 15 years ago, and they still come back. After that, they went away. Then the neighbor told the grandfather. The grandfather was very surprised. So he, like a lot of our Chinese, they are not Buddhists, they don't know what to do. They go and engage the Molo, Sai Kong, come and pray. But ghosts, you pray for them, they don't want all your prayers. Just like you go to Africa, the Africans are hungry, you do chanting for them, they're happy or not? They want makan, isn't it? They want clothes, isn't it? So we should offer these two things, food and clothing.